Give you the rules of today. We have two groups of candidates. Each candidate will get a chance by group to introduce themselves and then to answer some questions. I have some prepared questions to start, but if anybody here wants to ask a question, if you write your question on the card and then hold it up, and I have two people over here that will collect those cards, and we'll get to as many as we can. We figure we could do 10 questions altogether with each one, if you want to know a count. We will screen those only for legibility, clarity, and duplication. So we aren't going to screen things. The questions we require to be on issues that the City Commission might have to address. So we have Group 2, Seat 2 candidates in front of you. We have Dan Daley and we have Diane Simpson. And they have drawn for a position, and so we will begin with Ms. Simpson. I'm going to let you get up for the opening there, and you can take this. Mike, well, let's see. You won't be able to go very far with it, but you can stand up.
I'll stand up.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me finish what I was going with the instructions. 1 minute to answer. I know there is, but she wants to stand. For the first thing, she can stand. If there are questions, we're going to sit. Okay? All right. 1 minute for each, for the opening, 1 minute to answer each question, and 1 minute for a closing. There you go.
Okay, thank you. First of all, this is my first time running for office, so I'm adjusting to all of this stuff. But I'm vertically challenged, so I like to stand up so you can see me. I'm Diane Simpson. I'm Diane Gonzalez Simpson. I'm running for Coral Springs City Commission. Thank you for the League of Women Voters for having me here today. I'm happy to be here. I've been a Broward County resident for about 40 years. I came here with my family. I'm an accountant, a CPA. I've lived in Coral Springs for like 30 years. I bought my home when I was about 24 years old in Forest Hills. I have deep, deep roots in the community. Raised our children here. They've grown and gone to college. Now for the last 5 years, my husband Ron and I are empty nesters. So I have a small business. I do accounting and income taxes. Besides being a wife and a mom, I'm a member of a couple of other clubs. I've been involved in a group called Business and Professional Women's Club. What else can I tell you? I've been involved in local things, School Scouts, leadership, youth leaderships, Girl Scouts, homeless, feeding. Okay, food pantry and Gateway Food Pantry and some other things. I'm trying to keep on time, sorry. Okay, so I never ran for office before. After February 14th, I said I'm willing to get involved and do some more. My time is up? Okay. First time candidate. If elected, I will serve. Thank you so much.
No worries. Now you know where to look for the card, and we'll get on with that. Dan.
Thanks, Carol, and thank you all for coming out this afternoon. You know, I understand that ballot issues and local races aren't always the sexiest thing on the ballot, but sometimes they're the most important. So it's really kind of neat on a Saturday afternoon to see you all here. I don't know if my mic is on or not. I'm a former, for those that don't know, my name is Dan Daley. I'm a former legislative aide to State Representative Ari Porth, an attorney, a small business owner, and I grew up here in town, and for the last 6 years, I've had the honor to serve as one of your Coral Springs City Commissioners. The three main things we started on day one when elected were economic development, public safety, and enhancing the look and the feel of this community, and that hasn't and won't change come November. But the most important thing to me has been constituent service, and over the last 6 years, I've done my darndest to provide fast and reliable constituent service to any number of residents on any number of issues, regardless of what it is, no matter how big or how small, from potholes to business relocations. It's important to you, it's important to me, and with your help, we can continue that service in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. The first question, and this first question we'll give to Dan, and I hope you don't mind if I use your first name because I've known these people way too long. If Coral Springs residents don't do a much better job of recycling right, we will all pay more and the recycling program will be in jeopardy. If you support recycling, how do you propose the city get residents and businesses to fully participate?
Sure, Carol, thank you for the question. It's a really important question. For those of you that don't know, the 800-pound gorilla in Broward County right now is recycling. You used to have for a long time basically a monopoly, one provider. I won't name them, but they rhyme with waste management. They weren't a monopoly for a number of years. The cost of recycling cut in half. They're now going to be the only provider again in Broward County. That's going to mean costs are going to skyrocket. The market for recyclables in China has fallen out. The bottom has fallen out. So we've got a crisis here in Broward County. So how do we recycle smart? You've seen the city of Coral Springs produce a number of videos and flyers and any number of communication methods to get the word out about recycling right, but it's more than that. I'm proud to say that just a couple months back, we were forced pretty much to enter into a new contract with Waste Management. Long story short, I was able to hold up that process. I didn't wind up in a landfill, so I guess I'm safe. Was able to come back and make sure that we had provisions in that new contract that said Coral Springs gets the best version of that deal, regardless of what anybody else in this county gets. That ultimately is going to save residents money until we can find a better long-term solution.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, thanks. So my family's from Canada. They have extensive things going on in Canada. What we could do here, you know, some of the other communities have a different plastic box for the newspapers. I know some of the problem that we have is with our recycling is that it's coming out dirty. We're supposed to be washing it. If we could do some other containers where the newspapers go separate, then we're washing those plastic containers, those go separate. And I know in Canada they have a thing where you have to take like your compost, your food items, they actually have that you put that in a separate bag so that that goes somewhere and gets composted. So I think that there's some things that we could do in our homes that would help make our recycling more clean, which would be making us have less costs.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Diane, this goes to you for the next question. The new downtown proposes to have 700 apartments at just one corner of the busiest intersection in the city, with more being considered for other corners. What should be done to mitigate the impact on traffic flow in the area?
That's a good question. So of course we want to try and get those red lights synchronized to minimize traffic, but it is definitely going to add a lot. One thing we always care in Coral Springs about our trees. If we really run out of space, we might have to take those medians out. That would add another lane of traffic. Nobody really likes that. We used to be a tree city USA, but adding those many homes is definitely going to be a problem. Is going to be a challenge for the traffic in our community.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Carol. Look, transportation is one of the biggest issues, not just here in Coral Springs, but across Broward County. Let's not say it's not by comparison Atlanta or LA or New York, but we've got our significant issues. So the question in terms of Sample and University, look, it's our busiest intersection. So with any redevelopment, we're built out as a community, our only option is primarily redevelopment. We need to make sure that there are safeguards in place and additional traffic improvements, whether it's additional turn lanes, whether it's additional traffic calming methods, whatever it is, let the expert traffic engineers come up with those recommendations and make the developer pay for those improvements before approving that project. Let me put it into perspective though, because I don't want to cast a shadow on that project. That project is looking at the old Financial Plaza, the corner of Sample and University. You're talking about a $200 million redevelopment opportunity. I don't know if it'll actually end up being 700 units, residential units. There will be residential, retail, so think shops, restaurants, grocery, entertainment, hotel, all on one corner, right? This is the downtown Coral Springs. We're not trying to be downtown Miami or Fort Lauderdale. We're supposed to be something unique for the city of Coral Springs, but you're right, traffic's gonna have to come into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, this question, Dan. Will the proposed 1% surtax bring money to Coral Springs, and what's your priority use for that money?
Sure, Carol, so this is the surtax that you heard about earlier. This surtax, this portion of the surtax was actually passed by the residents of Broward County in November. Because it was tied to another ballot measure that ultimately failed, the entire thing failed. So this is the county coming back and the city's coming back and saying, okay, you didn't like both of the options, let's just move forward with this one. There are identified street and roadway projects that are eligible for funding with this money. As a matter of fact, at the last commission meeting, the commission voted to sign a letter of understanding with the county so that we can get some of that money. You're talking about serious millions of dollars over the next 20 to 30 years if we're part of that program. If we had not signed that LOI, all of our money, you still would have been taxed if it would have passed, but it would have gone to other cities across this county.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes, I was at that meeting and they explained that we needed to do that at our commission so that we could participate. So if that passes, then we get to participate. So I think your question is where would I put the money? We want to maintain some of our older neighborhoods, some of our older parks in our older neighborhoods have not really been updated. I'd like to see those updated. And I'd like to make sure that we get our roads on the right schedule so that they don't get too much wear and tear before they need to be updated.
Okay. And by the way, if anybody has questions and you've got a card, put your hand up. And who's running around? Stephanie over there. We'll collect them from you, and then we can start with those. Okay, the next question that I have is, and this one goes to Diane first. The city is considering moving the charter school to next to the Center for the Arts and make it a magnet school for the performing arts at the center. Now, this is a consideration. This may impact after-school programs which exist at the center for the general population. So what would you do to keep that from happening, and what's your proposal on the charter school?
Well, I know there's been a lot of discussion about where to move the charter school. It's been going on for some time. My kids actually went to the charter school. I think that's the best school in Coral Springs. And I know they talked about moving it to over by Brady Stradling. That didn't work out for the communities over there. They were not pleased. I think that, and I know the current discussion is for it to be at Mullins Park. It seems like it's the best choice of what they have. They even talked at one time about moving it down to Tamarack, and that got poo-pooed pretty quick. Okay, so your question is about the aftercare, whether it would conflict with the programs currently going on at the museum. We want to try and not impact them as much as possible, but there is definitely going to be an impact. But I think that's a good location for the charter school moving.
Okay, Dan.
Thanks, Carol. Listen, this is the charter school issue has been going for 5 or 6 years now. And the commission has taken and staff has taken look after look. I will tell you this latest proposal has not formally been proposed to the city to the city commission. So staff is working with the developer and ironing out the details, at which time they'll come to the commission and give us an overall presentation. My understanding is the same as Diane's, that they're looking at a portion of Mullins Park. It is not the same portion of Mullins Park that was originally proposed 4 to 5 years ago. I believe, my understanding is that alleviates some of the traffic concerns. As far as an impact on the Center for the Arts, we're going to have to work together, right? We oversee, through a third-party company, the programming of that facility. So I want to make sure that we're taking care of that programming while continuing to provide programming for our students at the A-rated charter school for the last 13 years.
Thank you. This question goes to Dan, and then I'm going to go to Stephanie in a minute. What is your view of the bond issues? You know, these are the 3 that the city proposed to the voters, and they were all turned down.
Sure.
So what is your view of the bond issues that were recently proposed but failed? If you agree that some of the proposed projects are priorities, how would you go about getting them done?
Sure, it's a very important question, Carol. Ultimately, the voters decided in March that they did not want to approve those additional bonds. Ultimately, if all 3 had passed, you're talking about just over $10 per household for $72 million in funding to allow parks and neighborhood enhancements, any number of projects that were outlined in the proposals. What I believe, and I was supportive of those projects. Look, the voters have spoken. We'll have to, for the really hot button items that were on those to-do lists, we're going to need to find another way to do it. Whether there's a way that some of that programming can be covered by the surtax should it pass in November, should we need to do some other shifting of funds to make sure that some of those programs, streets resurfacing, parks enhancements are completed, we'll have to take a good hard look at it. But ultimately, the residents decided they did not want to pay that additional $10 a month, and we have to live with that. And we need to make provisions to still make sure projects can move forward.
Thank you. Diane.
Hi, thank you. Okay, the projects, if I remember correctly, one was AstroTurf, the other was for a senior center, and I'm not sure if the third one was for police, the readers for the license plate. I'm unsure. But basically, yes, the taxpayers voted no. It was in March, and it went wild it went crazy on Facebook and social media, and it got voted down. Now, I do understand that for somebody like me who's been in my home for for 30 years, it will be $10 a month. But for But when you raise, it was a bond issue. Okay, sorry, I have to scratch that. It wasn't a tax increase, it was a bond issue. We have to listen to the voters. I messed up my train of thought, sorry.
Thank you. That
I'm
happens.
quitting.
Happens to me all the time. Okay. Let's see. Okay, this one goes to, make sure I have it. Yes. This one goes to Diane again. What is, no, I'm going to do this one. As a longtime resident of Coral Springs, I am extremely disappointed in the amount of available Section 8 housing in Coral Springs. It's bringing the city down. What would you do to change this?
Do you mean that there's too much Section 8?
That apparently is what this writer thinks.
Well, Section 8 housing is something that's not really mandated by the city at all. Section 8 housing is mandated by the property owner. Like, for instance, I own some rental property, and people often, my potential tenants ask me if I accept Section 8 housing. Personally, I don't. That has to do with the owner of the property. It's a person, as if it's a small business, whether it's a donut shop, anybody that owns that business, that rental property, whether it's a single-family house or a condo or an apartment, they decide whether or not they're going to accept Section 8.
Thank you. Dan?
Thanks, Carolyn. And I'll add, look, the Section 8 provisions are federal requirements. And if you try to prohibit Section 8 housing, you'll find yourself in federal court faster than you can say Section 8. You need to be understanding of the situation. But one of the ways that you can make sure that maybe Section 8 rentals are less viable options for landlords is to increase property values, right? So if property values continue to increase, maybe it's not such a good business decision for that landlord to rent to someone with Section 8. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's a federal program, and we cannot put restrictions on it one way or the other.
Okay. Dan, what is being built on the old City Hall site, and how will that impact the land value of the residents in the clusters, who I'm assuming must be behind?
Sure. Yes, Carol, so the clusters is the neighborhood immediately behind the property. As you've all seen, the City Hall has the old City Hall, which served us well for over 50 years, has come down, and it's vacant land at this time. I think the long-term plan is likely redevelopment. If a developer is smart, I think the hope is to acquire the Village Square property, which is the property right on the corner where Broward College used to be, culvert the canal, purchase the City Hall property, and redevelop the entire thing. What that will ultimately look like has yet to be seen. It depends on who comes in and who buys it. I'm not saying that it needs to be, let's say, mid-rise or high-rise backing right up to single-family homes. The Financial Plaza property is unique in that it's mostly surrounded by City Hall parking garage, post office, other businesses, the bank, right? It's not going to have an immediate impact on residential. The other side of the road, the old City Hall property, is another consideration, another situation, and it's going to require a closer look when we ultimately go to redevelop. But I'm confident it will be redeveloped as part of downtown Coral Springs.
Thank you. Diane, do you have a comment on the property there? Okay. One more question, and then we'll go to closing statements. And some of the questions that came in will go to the next set of people that we have coming. Who votes for the charter school location? And that goes to Diane.
Who votes for it?
Who votes for the charter school location?
If it was going to move.
If it was going to move, yeah. Well, if who's going to do it? Citizens or the commission?
There's going to be a proposal to the city commission, and the city commissioners are going to vote.
That's correct.
Dan, correct? So now you all know. Watch your city commission meetings. Yeah, watch your city commission meetings. Okay, that was too simple. We got to have one more on the budget. How do you plan to balance the budget? And I'm going to start that with Dan.
Sure. I thought I was getting off easy with just agreeing with Diane on that last one. But, look, the budget is complicated. You're talking about $215 million. We are the 15th largest city in the entire state of Florida. I know we still have that kind of small town feel in certain instances, but we're a growing city. And we've, in some cases, got growing pains. We need to make sure, so what you see, this last year, the budget we just approved as the City Commission, was no change in the millage rate. We understand how significant the millage rate change was the year prior. And let me be very clear, no one wanted to raise taxes. I didn't wake up that day and say, man, I would love to raise the millage rate in this city. Nobody wanted to do it, but it came down to a determination, do we cut substantive services? So think park closures, programs ending, or do we pay a little bit extra so we have the money to keep the doors open and the lights on? It was a tough decision, and it's one that we've had to make moving forward. This year, you're not going to see that happen. We've made substantive cuts to services for to our employees' benefit plans. Right? The employees have joined us in committing to pay a little bit extra for their health care plans to cut costs. So we've not had to change the millage rate this year. But keep in mind, if you were here earlier for the ballot presentation, Amendment 1, if it passes, will literally rip $3 million out of the budget of the city of Coral Springs the following year. That's going to be an impact all across this state. So as you go to the polls and vote yes or no on those ballots, keep that in mind. It's basically a bait and switch by the legislature, passing the buck to us to have to make up for those lost dollars while they get to claim a tax decrease.
Thank you, Dina. Diane.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so I have been reviewing the financial statements for the last number of years. And you know that the tax millage rate, the millage rate went up last year in 2018, 22%. So again, it might be $10 a month for me, for someone that's been in my home for a very long time, but it's not $10 a month for the businesses. It's not $10 a month if you rent an apartment, or say your mom or you live in Park Summit, because that's not a homesteaded property. When we raise the millage rate like that, it hits businesses and rental property or any non-homesteaded property bad. Our total taxable value citywide went up like 7% last year, 6% the year before. So you add that to a 22% millage increase, and it hits some people bad. Gas stations, Dunkin' Donuts, apartments. Okay, so what I would say, and we've also added 81 positions in the last 7 years. What I would say is, and like Dan was talking about, the city employees are gonna start participating 10% for their insurance. Over the next 6 years, it's going to jump to 20%. I was at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can add it to the closing statements. But Dan, you get to go to first for your closing statement.
Thanks, Carol. Real quick, if I can just jump in on the adds to staff in the last 7 years. Yes, 81 positions, and 41 of them were first responders. And I'm not going to ever apologize for hiring new first responders when I'm told by our chiefs that we need them. So with that, folks, listen, we talked about some really important topics today, and there's more to come. I want to thank you all for coming. We've had to make some tough decisions the last couple years. You don't elect people to make the easy decisions. Anybody can do that. Votes that I've taken over the last couple years may not be the most politically popular things, but they were in my heart what I thought were the right decision for the long-term value of Coral Springs. And for that reason, I can sleep at night. I'm not trying to climb a political ladder here, otherwise I would have maybe done my votes a little bit differently. I look to weigh the issues and the facts and make the decision that I think is in the best long-term interest of this city, my hometown. For the last 6 years, you've had a fighter. I've fought Tallahassee every year on any number of preemption issues, most notably their draconian gun preemption. There's actually a lawsuit filed in the state of Florida because of it. We fought waste companies to make sure you guys get a fair deal and we get to save money. I fought irresponsible development. I voted against the last mattress store. And day in and day out, I fought for the residents of the city of Coral Springs. But the fight isn't over, so on November 6th, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Diane.
Okay, thank you. So my platform has been developed by the people that I have met and what their issues are. Number 1 is financial responsibility. Number 2 is business friendly. Number 3 is customer service. When we deal with the city, I want people to say, I want them to walk away and say they were really nice, they really helped me out, they helped solve my problem. I think that there's areas that we can improve our level of customer service. I'm not a politician, I'm an accountant. This is my first time running for office. I represent change. If elected, I'd be here for the entire 4-year term. I'd be attending any committee meetings that I was assigned to. I'm not planning on running for higher office. Oh, I have to tell you that my maiden name is Diana Maria Gonzalez because I'm a New Yorker. And I'm running for commissioner, and I would like your support. I humbly ask for your vote, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dan and Diane, so much for coming. While we are moving around with Lou and Joshua, make your way down to the table here, and just, we'll take a pause.